Hi, this time I want to share what are my tips on my professional tarot card reader's journey for you as a beginner. So, one of the main questions I get asked often by people is, how do I buy my first tarot card deck? And it almost as often gets to be followed by another question, which is a myth that I'm going to debunk today. And that myth I'm going to start with. So there's this idea out there that the first tarot card deck has to be gifted by someone to you so that you would have good fortune for reading tarot cards. Or there are some levels of, as usually there is for myths, that it go even further, that it is not allowed to buy your first tarot cards or this or that. It can be an evil doing. It can bring bad luck, blah, 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 which none of those are true, essentially. If you will talk to most tarot card readers like me who do it professionally, you might hear our opinion being just go and buy your cards. There is no reason not to. And for me personally, I feel in my own meditative and knowledge and learning journey, I do have an idea why that myth might be. I wouldn't be surprised if it was just a means of safety back in the day. As some card readers also have mentioned, it's a bit of a Renaissance time era idea about it. So it could be a little bit connected to, whatever somebody felt comfortable with in their family to either be openly reading tarot cards and do divination or not. And if somebody would gift it to them, that's a clear way of knowing, oh yeah, this is allowed. If not, then maybe not allowed, right? Also, we can understand from the history of witches, and witches are very much so connected with tarot cards as well, at least nowadays, and other divination practices, that we have felt unsafe. And there are reasons for that as well. Just look up history and you'll know why. And returning back to choosing your first tarot card decks, now that you know that the myth is a myth, yes, you can go and buy your own first tarot card deck freely today. You don't have to wait for anything. You don't have to make somebody buy them for you or beg or whatever. You can, of course, ask for others to give it as a gift to you, but it does come with a tricky bit. If somebody buys tarot cards for you, you don't really know if they're going to be the ones that you would be the most excited to receive. They will have their own feelings and ideas when they will look at the tarot cards, whilst you would have some others. Even if it's your sister and you grew up together, maybe you're even twins, they might choose something else than you, right? So essentially, I do think the best way to receive our first tarot card deck is to buy it ourselves. And to just share a little bit nuggets of my own story. So when I went for my first tarot card classes, I already knew about tarot cards. I had gone to readings. I knew how they looked. I knew different decks existed. So I was quite fascinated by the art that I saw out there. And I was also, in my first tarot card lessons, informed how to buy tarot cards. And I actually did it the same day. I went to a shop and I did it very intuitively. I really was encouraged to also do it intuitively, and I'm very lucky that I was in that situation. So I also encourage you to be intuitive with your choosing. What do I mean by that? When you see the tarot card deck out there, you will see, a package, and often, especially in physical shops, they might be sealed. You might not see what the cards look inside, besides the few cards that are probably, or more than a few, put on the outside, right? But for many decks, it's like very, very little information that is shown. And you might see just 2 cards out of, a 78 card deck, which is very little. So I do suggest, if there's an option to ask in the shop, to ask them to open it and show the tarot card deck, then you can see more pictures and more differences between those cards, and that can reveal you if you feel connected to it. What do I mean by that? So, this is my first tarot card deck that I bought. I did not have the option to open it, by the way, but I saw this and I saw this. Clearly, they are two tarot cards in the deck. And also, the little drawings on the sides actually are other tarot cards there. Oh, you can see how I love the deck. But I intuitively felt like the colors, the vibe, everything, it just felt really like something that I would want to explore. And I was like, I felt like I might have more tarot card decks in the future than just one. So I was like, okay, let me just go for this one. I was very intrigued. So when I did buy it, I was very happy because this is, for me, such an artwork to look at these tarot cards because they have so much story in them. And that's how I and my brain tend to work. I love stories and I instantly get to express something. When I look at each of these cards, I'm like, wow, I have something to say, although I know nothing about tarot at that point. So that was one of the ways that I actually tend to suggest now to my students as well to buy tarot cards, to look at a deck at which looking at you're like, wow, I feel like I can tell something about it. And for you, it might be very different looking deck than it is for me that gives you so much information, right? But for me, these are the sort of decks that I feel just so much story in them. So that's why I also suggest, if there's an option and you are interested in some tarot cards and you're very unsure in the shops or something, you don't have this intuitive nudge at that moment, maybe go online and look up the names of the tarot card decks and whoever has created that deck, and just look at the pictures online, because most of them nowadays will be also online, at least to some extent. You can see some more cards of the same deck. So, for example, this one I bought online and I'm very pleased with it. But at the beginning, I had a bit of a harder time to tell a story from this beautiful, beautiful card deck. So it is okay if, even if you buy a card deck that felt intuitively close, that you might still have a bit of harder time to maybe at the beginning translate it. But over time, especially if you learn tarot cards with me or some other professional, they will give you loads of tips on how to open it up, how to understand the information. And by now, I can tell very confidently that I can read all of the tarot card decks that I own, and each new one that is super challenging, like for example, this one, which is more like a game, I still find a way to read it. But that's because I have a very intuitive method of reading tarot cards, and I can read just about any tarot cards out there. But yeah, enough about me. Going back to the tarot card buying suggestions. So tarot cards actually have very specific systems. And if you look at the tarot card deck, from the tarot card decks that I own, this one, the Marseille Tarot, is going to be the oldest one from the decks that I have. It is created at 1751. So it is a forefather of many other tarot card decks nowadays. And if we look at tarot history, which I should do a video about, right? Let me know if you want to do some videos about tarot history. Or maybe when I have it, it could be somewhere here, right? So, looking at these older tarot card decks, they definitely influence the ones coming after them. And Marseille's Tarot is a huge inspiration. You can see it all the time looking at the other tarot card decks that came after, like the Rider-Waite-Smith Tarot card deck, which at the moment might be the most popular deck in the world. And if somebody wants to study with me tarot, this is the deck I suggest to buy, because I'm going to base my tarot card course for beginners, tarot for intuition activation, based on this deck. The descriptions, the symbols, the everything is going to be based on this one, because it invites and shows so much structure. And this deck actually was drawn and made by Pamela Coleman Smith, a woman. And it was published at 1909, so a little bit after the Marseilles, but very much so influenced by it. And I always mention this deck because of it. Exists this deck, like Modern Witch Tarot, which is very popular right now. Also, this Shadowscapes one that I showed you exists because of it. The Light Seers, for sure. The Wheel of the Year, my first tarot card deck. All of them have inspired from Rider-Waite-Smith, which inspired from Marseilles. So there's a close connection. Why I say all of that? Because it goes into the structure of the tarot cards, at least the base structure. So a normal, regular tarot card deck will have 78 tarot cards in it, which means 22 major arcana, like the big secrets, and 56 minor arcana, the more ordinary life secrets. And going from there, you get 78. But there are tarot card decks out there that will go outside of this norm. At the moment, I don't have a deck here to show it. That might have more cards, like 80 or 81 or blah, blah. Usually more than less, but sometimes also less. One great example of that is the Osho tarot cards. They have added a lot, and they also have renamed most of the major arcana and changed a lot of the system, which does happen. But if somebody wants to learn tarot cards and work with more than one deck in their life, they want to discover, they are intrigued, I do suggest to start at something that has a good basis, good structure. That's why I do the Rider-Waite-Smith as a good suggestion. But if you're a beginner that wants to learn on their own fully, I do not suggest this deck because you might lack the structure and knowing to use it. If you do things completely on your own, I do suggest something more intuitive that just comes to you. If it's Rider-Waite-Smith, sure. But most of us won't have that. And another thing, of course, if you are learning this, it doesn't mean this is the only system out there. So there's another system actually created by a colleague of Rider-Waite and also Pablo Coleman-Smith. It's Aleister Crowley, and he did it together with Lady Freda Harris. And they all were part of, how you call it, this secret organization at the time, Golden Dawn. And they had created, actually, all of them in their Golden Dawn teachings, how to connect astrology with tarot. So that's the biggest work they did. That was not really connected beforehand. Like in the Marseilles tarot, there was no connection, at least not officially. And here they did it. But Aleister Crowley and Lady Freda decided to go in a different way with tarot cards and their meanings and some things. So he was in some ways more creative, and that also, in my opinion, opened up the creativity of today, where tarot cards are very different names and visuals can be also varying way more than they may be used to. So the Thoth tarot card deck is another beginner milestone at the kind of slightly this similar time. This one was published, I think, where's the original time? It's not written, but also in the 1900s, I remember. But this deck is so complex, in my opinion. It has so much symbols and everything that I never suggested to beginners. And coming from this one, it also includes the system of Kabbalah, the Tree of Life. If you don't know anything about Kabbalah and Tree of Life, I don't suggest to buy something of sorts. But I do know more, and that's why I have multiple decks on the topic. So another tip, in case you are already learning some other divination spiritual things, for example, numerology, you might find decks that are very much focused on numbers. And actually, all of the normal, regular tarot card decks have numerology in them, and you can use that. Or if somebody has a bit more pagan roots, but connected to the Wheel of the Year, this deck actually is connected to it. So will be other decks that are more like for witches, or maybe a little bit connected with known religions like Hinduism or Buddhism, or also Christianity, all of that. And if we're looking at tarot card decks out there in general, there do exist decks that are more called games. For example, this beautiful deck, it has all the structure, it has all the basis, but it is called Women of Science, and it is meant as a game. So it will have some extra things that are different, and some things will be taken like off and some others added. So it's very science related. The major arcana seems to be very connected to everything, but when we go into minor arcana, we get pure facts of history and women that actually did something for us in our development. And it is a way harder deck to translate if you don't know these topics or you don't know tarot at all. So for you, it might just become a game where you need to use the book and use it as that, which is also an option. So looking at all these tips that I'm giving you, I do suggest as the main one is to go together with your curiosity. And tarot cards are very good at that. That is actually another way to call tarot, learning tarot, is to go on a fool's journey. And the fool is the first card of tarot, and it's gonna go through all of these other cards, all of these other stories and moments, activities and lessons in life, and that's how it's developing. And in that sense, you are the fool that is learning in this. And I know that many card decks out there might have changed the names of some cards very strongly and all of that. In case you are learning in my course, I will always find to inform you what each thing is. But if you're learning on your own, understand that there is a structure out there for the tarot cards. And if you want to understand it better, I often advise to go back to Rider-Waite-Smith, because that's where you will find it the most logical and modern and known nowadays. And in that way, if, for example, somebody doesn't like the visuals of this, there are decks like the Modern Witch Tarot, which is almost the same, just with modern ideas on the very known deck. So I do have lots of decks myself. I don't think everyone has to have so many, but I really like the idea that some decks have different purposes. And in case you want to learn about that, let me know in the comments below. I might do a video about it then. But for today, I hope you have realized how to buy your own first tarot card deck, and that yes, you can on your own. And for sure, if you have more questions about the topic, let me know. And for today, I do wish you the most blissful growth of your life. This is Linda and Tarot Mysteries.